Thank you very much, Senator Rounds. Let me recognize Senator Hirono, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to all of you on your nominations, and thank you for your service. I asked the following two initial questions of all nominees on any of the committees on which I sit. So I'd like to ask each of you, and the response will start with Ms. Harris, and we'll just go right down the line. Since you became a legal adult, have you ever made unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any verbal or physical harassment or assault of a sexual nature?
No.
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 Have you ever faced discipline or entered into a settlement related to this kind of conduct?
No.
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 Thank you. Mr. Owens, my home state of Hawaii is still reeling from the catastrophic fuel leak at the Red Hill bulk fuel storage facility. I don't know if you, do you have a familiarity with this facility? Have you ever visited the facility?
I've never visited, but I've seen pictures, and it's gigantic.
It's massive. It is in the order of, in terms of an engineering feat, in the order of Hoover Dam. And yeah, it is massive. But you've been asked some questions relating to PFAS, and there are various contamination issues that the military has to deal with. But the situation at Red Hill is quite immediate. It led to the widespread water contamination, forcing thousands of Navy personnel and their families to leave their homes for months until their safe return could be assured. And due to the leak and the ongoing concerns about the facility's safety, DoD has announced its intent to entirely defuel and permanently close Red Hill by the end of 2024. You can imagine what kind of enterprise this is going to be to defuel hundreds of millions of gallons of fuel. So U.S. Navy has proposed a defueling plan, which the Hawaii Department of Health recently rejected in whole, since the department plans lacks the requisite detail and specificity necessary for the DOH to fully evaluate how the department will execute safe and expeditious defueling. If you are confirmed, oversight of facilities across the country, including Red Hill, will be under your purview. This year's NDAA currently authorizes $1 billion for the Red Hill Recovery Fund, and Congress is expecting to receive a detailed breakdown of how this money will be spent from the department. Delay in providing this justification risks compromising the safe and timely closure of the facility and could further disrupt the community's confidence in DoD in the state. So when all of this happened, of course, the Navy's handling of the spill and all of that left a lot to be desired, and so the community has a lot of questions, and I would like you to assure me that defueling and closure is completed in a safe and expeditious manner, and that you will be take personal responsibility along with all the people who are going to be involved in this, but in your position, can I look to you to make sure that the defueling happens safely and in an expeditious manner?
Senator, I absolutely commit to doing everything within the purview of the ASDEINE to ensure that the resources that are necessary to safely defuel Red Hill in alignment with the Secretary's plan are executed.
Yes, and our appropriation committees is awaiting a much more detailed defueling plan, so I hope that's something that, should you be confirmed, that this is another thing that you will pay attention to. Again, for you, Mr. Owens, DoD currently has more than 174,000 non-tactical vehicles across the service branches, making it the second largest share of the federal vehicle fleet after the U.S. Postal Service. Earlier this year, I introduced the Military Vehicle Fleet Electrification Act with Senator Warren, King, and others, and included language in the fiscal year 2023 NDAA that would require DoD to transition to fully electric or zero-emission non-tactical vehicles by the end of 2030. Mr. Owens, do you agree that transitioning to electric non-tactical vehicles will help combat climate change while helping to ensure our military has the advantage of a modern fleet of vehicles that reduce the military's dependence on oil?
Senator, I think that the combination of several investments that are being made on installations, including electric vehicles, but particularly microgrids, and the ability for microgrids to provide a backbone for more energy diversity and resilience is an excellent reason to proceed as you have outlined.
I take it that that is a yes today.
It's a yes. It's a big yes.
Thank you very much. I think we need to move ahead on this kind of transitioning because the DOD is the biggest user of fossil fuels of all of the agencies. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Rona. Senator Tillis, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations to all of you on your nominations. I actually want to start by thanking Senator Warren for the work that she and I have done over the past several years for military housing. I would say it steps in the right direction, but it seems to me it's a continuing journey that we've got to get right. We do have a measure in the NDA that takes another step in the right direction, but Mr. Owens, we've got a lot more work to do. In North Carolina, I've made it a focus and have done town halls down there, and it seems to have improved, but I think system-wide we have challenges, and we have challenges in North Carolina. So I'm curious your thoughts, what your priorities would be. How can we really regain the trust of military families, personnel that are living in military housing? And secondly, we have to recognize that because of mold, a number of other exposures that the occupants have had to endure, that we have some health implications. So in addition to fixing the inventory moving forward, we've also got to take a serious look at instances where we think illnesses can clearly be linked to exposures in some of this, what I consider to be substandard housing. How are you going to tackle that?
Thank you for the question, and I really want to, again, commend this committee for taking such a strong interest in ensuring that military family housing is up to the dignity of the people that are living in it. Housing is a readiness issue. Housing is something that we owe to our service members for the sacrifices that they make. In terms of how to prioritize, I think this committee has done an excellent job in providing direction to and resources for increasing the amount of oversight that's been happening, and I would look to continue to do that. Look to ensure that the Tenant Bill of Rights that has been established is something that can be universally accessed and driven to ensure that our tenants have the ability, our military families have the ability to get answers to questions that they may have. And then in terms of the health implications, if there are any, I'll commit to working with senior leaders in DOD to ensure that we are providing the resources and that are necessary to address any situations that do arise.
Thank you for that. Dr. Plumb, anytime I see somebody going before this committee that's have anything to do with acquisition, I always have to bring one of my favorite props. A nearly 600-page request for proposal for the next generation handgun. It started in the Air Force, it ended up in the Army. It took a half a generation to decide what the next generation handgun would be. This is not a complex platform. This is something that it just boggles my mind that we haven't figured out how to tailor acquisition processes in a way that gets it done sooner, gets the capability deployed sooner, and also provides the opportunity for a larger group of people to participate. In North Carolina, we have a very strong, we have a military business center. In fact, we just had a meeting this week with a number of small businesses that contribute to the defense industrial base. But if they look at something like this, they're out before they ever start. They can't simply afford to go through hundreds of pages and a multi-year process to put forth what may be one of the best innovations that we could potentially consider. So we're squeezing out, I think, a number of innovators in the acquisition process. So what can we do, number one, just generally to increase and to bolster our industrial base by engaging more small businesses? And secondly, how can we make progress on acquisition processes that don't result in 600-page next generation handgun RFPs?
Senator, that is a excellent example that really highlights how we absolutely need to be faster and better at bringing technology to the warfighter. Now, we do have some approaches that we need to leverage more. We have the adaptive acquisition framework that gives us a couple other tiers, middle tier acquisition authorities, software acquisition authorities. This committee has really been very supportive in helping us have some innovative authorities and approaches. We need to use them more.
Thank you. And I hope to work with you. I spent a fair amount of time in supply chain and acquisition in the private sector, and after you're confirmed, would like to talk specific initiatives. Ms. Kiley, Doctor, did I pronounce that right? I just have a quick question in closing. We just recently passed the CHIPS bill, and the CHIPS bill clearly recognizes that we have an insufficient indigenous semiconductor manufacturing capability in this country. If we see how the sanctions on Russia, particularly with respect to importing chips, has disrupted their military supply chains, do you consider that a wise investment with respect to our own military industrial base?
Thank you, Senator. I think that it's going to be very important to focus on microelectronics and in the short term as well as in the long term. I think that the CHIPS Act will bring us closer to more readiness and sort of resilience in our defense industrial base. I share your concern that having shortages in this area will lead to insecurity later on, as well as in the immediate future. I think if confirmed, I will work closely with industry as well as with the interagency, particularly the lead agencies focused on microelectronics, to make sure that we can ensure the needs of our defense industrial base.
Thank you. Again, congratulations on your nominations.
Thank you, Senator Tillis. Senator Warren, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations to all of you. I want to thank Senator Tillis. I so appreciate his partnership in our work on military housing, and he's asked my questions. So I think Mr. Owens knows that Senator Tillis and I and this entire committee is going to stay on this issue. It is powerfully important to our military and to our national defense, and also it's about what's right. So I'm going to try to be efficient and ask about some other issues. And what I'd like to focus on is conflicts of interest and ethics at the Pentagon. This year, the Pentagon's budget is going to exceed $800 billion. About half that spending is going to go to for-profit defense contractors to build weapons, to perform maintenance, and to provide consulting services. Contract and program decisions should be based on what's in the best interests of national security, period. But the revolving door between the Pentagon and private defense contractors sometimes spins so fast it just looks like a blur. Senior Pentagon officials leaving work for Lockheed or Boeing, top lobbyists or executives from these companies coming into government to hand out contracts to their former employers. Real or perceived conflicts of interest undermine the public's confidence and can also lead to program delays or even cancellation. So, Dr. Plumb, you have been nominated to a top role in the part of the Pentagon that focuses on acquisition. Can you say a word about your views about why it is important that government officials making decisions about which defense contractors get taxpayer dollars must be free from conflicts of interest?
Senator, thank you, and thank you for your leadership on this issue. As you note, it is just so important at the department that our number one job is to deliver capabilities to the warfighter, and those capabilities need to be selected to get the best capabilities, and that means that conflict of interest, apparent or actual, can undermine, as you note, that trust, but also make it harder for key new ideas to break through and get into that process. We have a number of efforts underway, ethics agreements in this administration, improved oversight of our standards of conduct. If confirmed, I pledge to continue those, but also more to fulsomely work with you and this committee to make sure we're getting this balance right, getting the conflicts out.
Well, that's a really good point about how conflicts of interest can actually keep us from finding the best products, from innovating in the ways we need to innovate. A very strong point. So let's talk about the things we can do in order to reduce the conflicts of interest. You know, through the years, I have proposed a number of changes to strengthen our ethics laws. Now, some of my colleagues think that strong ethics requirements will stop people from wanting to go into government. There have been at least 10 government-funded studies now on this exact issue, how to improve the recruitment and retention of the federal workforce. And not a single one of them has concluded that ethics laws are the barrier. When we talked last week, you said that we need to consider both needing to attract and retain people who want to solve big problems and preventing the appearance of self-dealing. Dr. Plumb, do you agree that we could strengthen ethics standards at the Pentagon without hurting our ability to attract top talent in public service?
Senator, I do agree. I think we need to think about how we structure and make precise our ethics requirements and our oversight so that we can attract top talent, let them work on hard problems, let them solve hard problems for this country while making sure we avoid conflicts of interest. And there's absolutely space to make progress there. And I, if confirmed, would really welcome an opportunity to work on that with you.
Well, I think you've already answered then the question I was going to ask, and that is, will you commit to working with me to ensure that government officials working on acquisition programs and policies are free of conflicts of interest?
Senator, I would welcome an opportunity to work with you on that. Thank you.
That is terrific. Thank you very much. You know, this is a problem across administrations and across government agencies, but it is particularly acute at DOD given the size of the Pentagon's budget. A lot of money is at stake here. Our last 3 secretaries of defense came to DOD straight from the board or from being a lobbyist for the Pentagon's top 5 contractors. We've got to do a lot more to end the cozy relationship between the Pentagon and the defense industry. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Warren. Senator Blackburn, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to each of you, congratulations on your nominations. As you can tell, we're a very busy committee here, and this will not be the last time you all hear from us. And we look forward to working with you to make certain that our men and women in uniform have what they need to carry out their mission. And you've heard about ethics, you've heard about what we need for our housing for the military, about acquisitions. I know that Senator Inhofe even talked a little bit about Facebook and big tech and some of those applications. I'm going to turn now to a topic you're going to hear me talk about a lot, and it is about maintenance and deferred maintenance. And Mr. Owens, I'm going to come to you on this because we've got 550,000 buildings that we have a backlog. There is a goal of getting to 90% on this, but the current estimate, I think, last time I looked, it was at $121 billion in the FSRM. Does that sound right to you?
Senator Blackburn, the briefing paper that I read on FSRM had that number in it, and it didn't sound right to me. I've come to learn that it's right. It's a big number.
It is right. And DOD has over 550,000 buildings and facilities worldwide. And as my dad would always say, if you build it, you have to maintain it. And it seems as if we are getting to the point that deferred maintenance in that backlog is way out of control. So I want to bring this home to you with an example in Tennessee. And I'm going to ask you to visit this facility with me. It is an Air Force base. It is Arnold Engineering and Development Center. And it is located there in Tullahoma, Tennessee. Those of you involved with DOD have probably heard about this. We've got great Tennesseans that work there. They are leading the way on testing some of our mission-critical engine and hypersonic testing. It is going to be imperative for the growth of our Air Force and for Space Force. And they are doing this research work in buildings that are crumbling around them. And the deferred maintenance it keeps getting pushed off. And I do give the Air Force Secretary credit for having pushed forward to try to get resources there. This is part of our critical infrastructure future and needs to be addressed. So how are you going to begin addressing that backlog? Because you just said you saw that figure and you thought this can't be right, but it is. So how do you begin to reshape that, whittle down, prioritize it?
Senator, I want to thank you for bringing this issue to the forefront and being so stalwart in your focus on it. In my view, the DoD has to balance their mission requirements and their sustainment requirements. And I think one of the things that is critical to understand is that the health and well-being of the warfighter is directly connected to the built environment and the physical environment that they inhabit. So one of the things that I'd like to do is try to highlight the connection between the fact that the people who are in these buildings are being affected by them if they are not.
There are human capital infrastructure, and they're a very vital and necessary component. So what kind of analysis, what kind of partnerships, what kind of approach do you plan to bring to this? You've obviously given some forethought to this.
Yes, and I think that the prioritization exercises that are necessary to ensure that we are putting the money in the places where it's going to have the maximum benefit to support the mission and then the health and well-being of the military and military service family members is going to be a priority for the ASD-EI&E, working across in collaboration with all of the other EI&E positions for the services. Okay.
I also want to ask you about climate change, because that DOD is saying this is they've identified climate change as a critical national security issue, a threat multiplier, a top management challenge, but we've never seen data that would support that. So how do you, I'm running out of time and we're over. Let's do this. Why don't you submit that answer for the record? And then Dr. Plumb, I've got a question I will submit to you. Ms. Harris, I do have a question specific to you that I will submit. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Senator Blackburn. Senator Peters, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and each of the nominees, thank you for your willingness to serve, and congratulations on your nomination. Mr. Owens, my first question is for you. If you're confirmed, your office will clearly have significant role in leading the Department of Defense's PFAS cleanup efforts, and I know you've spoken about that to some of my colleagues and questions that they've addressed to you already. This is unfortunately a subject that Michiganders know all too well. We have communities all across our state, from Oscoda, which is the former home to Wurtsmith Air Force Base, to the K.I. Sawyer Air Force Base in Marquette, that have been grappling with PFAS contamination literally for decades. These folks are sick and tired of what they have seen as a slow response, and basically some disrespect from the Department of Defense. So when it comes to dealing with what is a significant issue. So my question for you, sir, is if confirmed, will you ensure that the Department of Defense commits to pursuing remediation in these two sites in particular in Michigan, and give it the type of attention that the folks there deserve and have been waiting far too long to get?
Senator, the health and well-being of our service members and the defense communities that support them is critical. If confirmed, I will commit to ensuring that we are addressing and budgeting for the appropriate resources that are necessary to do the remediation.
Well, if confirmed, I intend to invite you to come up to Michigan to see these sites firsthand and to talk to these individuals, and I'd hope you'd consider accepting that invitation if confirmed.
Yes, Senator.
Dr. Taylor-Kale, an analysis conducted by a friend, Stefan Gaddy, a senior fellow at the International Institute for Strategic Studies, concluded that at the current rate the Ukrainian military is firing HIMARS rockets, they will exhaust in less than 2 months the 9,000 missiles that the United States currently produces annually. Simply put, I think it's clear the U.S. defense industrial base needs to consider what was required to fully equipped war in a modernized industrial war like we're seeing between Ukraine and Russia. And so my question for you is, if confirmed, how would you work within the Pentagon, with Congress, and with the industrial base partners to ensure that the U.S. military would remain well supplied in the event of a conventional conflict with a near-peer competitor, whether that be China or Russia or someone else? Clearly, our stockpiles need to be bigger, but our production rates need to be higher as well.
Thank you, Senator. First, I want to note that I believe our support to Ukraine has been invaluable in combating Russian aggression. The crisis has clearly laid bare some of the critical vulnerabilities in our supply chain. As I've noted before, some of these we've known for a while, and others are becoming more apparent. If confirmed, supply chain resilience would be an absolute priority for this role and for this office. And of course, working across the department enterprise will be key. So if confirmed, I would work closely with Undersecretary LaPlante and others in acquisition and sustainment, but also with the military departments and the Joint Chiefs planning to better understand the needs of the industrial base, and also working with with industry partners to understand where the gaps are, where the critical needs are. As I've stated before, I think workforce is going to be a particular concern for the industrial base moving forward, and it's something that I think the department and, of course, the industrial base policy will need to work closely with industry to address.
Very good. Dr. Taylor-Kale, another question for you here. The Senate just recently passed the Chips and Science Act to ensure that we are producing semiconductors essential for so many products here in America, including the auto industry. Particularly important that we passed that bill for an industry that is a major industry in the state of Michigan, but important for the whole country. Could you please speak to how vital it is for us to ensure that we have a supply of semiconductors that are manufactured here in the United States, and how that relates to national security in your mind?
Senator, I want to underline my support for the CHIPS Act, and appreciate the work of the Senate and moving that bill forward. Microelectronics are an important issue within the supply chain because they cut across areas, they cut across sectors. And I think like workforce, like some of these other issues that are cross-cutting, the Defense Department, along with industry and as partners, along with the rest of the interagency, needs to work together and understanding better how to increase supply and make sure that these critical components are available, and allow for our defense industrial base to be able to replenish and restock as necessary.
Right. Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Peters. Senator Sullivan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank our nominees today. Congratulations. Dr. Taylor-Kale and Dr. Plumb, you're going to have a very important position here, defense industrial base policies. Can both of you briefly talk about how important critical minerals are for our defense industrial base, how reliant we are on China, critical minerals, rare earths, and, well, are they important? Can you just give me a quick answer? I have a number of questions on these.
Senator, yes, both critical minerals and specifically rare earths are really important inputs, and there are, as you know, supply chain issues.
Supply chain and reliance issues on China, correct?
That's my understanding, sir.
And does that undermine our national security?
Senator, I think making sure we have a robust and resilient supply chain for them is absolutely critical for our national security.
Do you agree with that, Dr. Taylor-Kale?
Absolutely. I'm concerned about our supply chains being vulnerable to foreign adversaries, as well as to sole source suppliers, so absolutely.
And if it's possible, and the President has held summits on this already, the best approach is to be able to source these from home, particularly critical minerals, rare earths, which we have an abundance of. Isn't that correct?
Yes,
you
sir,
agree with
that's
that?
my understanding, yeah.
Would you agree with that?
That's my understanding as well.
So I want to talk a little bit about a issue that's just as a head shaker for me. My state has enormous natural resources: oil, gas, critical minerals, rare earth elements. Great state of Alaska. Some estimates more than almost any other country in the world. Yet the Biden administration has issued 26 executive orders and executive actions focused on shutting down these things. I'm going to talk about one because it's just remarkable. And we have a area called the Ambler Mining District that is considered one of the most extensive mineral resources, critical minerals of undeveloped zinc, copper, lead, gold, silver of anywhere in the world. We have no transportation to it. So for decades, we have worked on a road to the Ambler Mining District. This project began under the Obama administration, 7 years of permitting, millions and millions of dollars, got the final record of decision on this in July of 2020 to start the road to the Ambler Mining District. Everybody supported it. On February 22nd, 2022, the same day the President hosted a summit to announce steps to enhance America's critical mineral supply chains, the Department of Interior reversed the previous administration's record of decision and shut down the record of decision for the road to the Ambler Mining District. So, President's holding a summit on these issues. Other part of the administration, as they do on most things in Alaska, shut it down. Crushing jobs, of course, but really undermining our national security, defense issues. The President then in March announced his plan to use the Defense Production Act to secure reliable supply chains for critical minerals used in batteries and that power electric vehicles, which include those from the Ambler Mining District. How smart do you think that move was in Alaska to shut down critical mineral production? By the way, 7-year EIS, 36,000 public comments, 30 public hearings, 30 consultations with tribal groups. How smart do you think that is for our industrial base, defense industrial base, which the two of you will oversee?
Senator, as you noted at the beginning, we need to figure out ways to get onshore more reliable access to critical minerals. And if confirmed, I would absolutely work on making sure I understand these cases, other cases like this, and make sure we robustly advocate for the right mix of investments and support to get that reliable supply chain for those critical minerals.
Dr. Taylor-Kale, how do you think this makes sense?
Senator, I understand how important this Ambler mine is to the people of Alaska, and I thank you for raising the issue and for bringing this up. I'm not familiar with the decision-making process and the details, but I want to reiterate my colleague in noting that, looking at the case-by-case understanding of how we can better improve access to critical minerals and strategic materials will be absolutely important.
Well, look, I appreciate your answers. This is an ongoing, I can't get answers from anybody in the Pentagon, at the Department of Interior. Why would you do this? Why would you do this? Okay, this thing is the highest environmental standards. So until I get answers, I think both of you are qualified. Until I get answers, I'm going to put a hold on both of your nominations until I get answers from high-level administration officials. I'm sick and tired of the targeting of my great state. 26 executive orders. Jack, can you imagine, Mr. Chairman, if they did that to Rhode Island? And it's hurting not just my state, my workers, it's hurting the national security of America. So until I get answers on Ambler at high levels, Unfortunately, I'm not going to help move your nominations forward, even though I think you're qualified. You have important positions. But this is important. Same day the president holds a summit on critical minerals, they shut down one of the biggest critical mineral supplies in America, maybe in the world, because of their relentless war on the state of Alaska. So I need answers, and then your nominations can move. I have more questions for the record that I will submit. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Sullivan. Senator Hawley, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to the nominees. Thank you for being here. Mr. Owens, if I could just start with you. If confirmed, you would oversee the military private housing initiative. That is something that is of great interest to us in the state of Missouri, particularly as it concerns Fort Leonard Wood, where you may know, hopefully know, that we have many aging homes and facilities that are in need of replacement. My question is this: if you are confirmed, would I have your commitment to prioritize those aging facilities at Fort Leonard Wood so we can make sure that our service members there and their families get the quality housing that they deserve?
Senator Hawley, I think you've hit exactly what I would say is a critical area in terms of health and well-being of service members and their families. And if confirmed, I'll work with the Army and make sure that we are providing the resources that are necessary to recapitalize those houses.
Very good. Thank you for that. Dr. Taylor-Kale, if I could come to you, I've made it a priority over the last few years that I've been in the Senate to try and end DOD's use of Chinese printed circuit boards in our critical defense systems. And we've made some progress on this over pretty significant industry opposition, I might note. But there's a lot more that remains to be done to end DOD's reliance on Chinese suppliers. And so my question is, if you're confirmed, what steps would you advocate in taking to reduce DOD's reliance on Chinese suppliers and strengthen our own industrial base?
Thank you, Senator. I think you've raised the key issue that's facing the defense industrial base and the strategic threat of China. I agree with the administration, with Secretary Austin, that China is the pacing threat. Taiwan is the pacing scenario. I don't believe that we can afford to sit back on this. If confirmed, I will work closely with this committee, with industry and across the department enterprise to address these issues and to see how we can come up with solutions to reduce our dependence on China.
Very good. Let me just ask you a little bit broader question. Give me your sense of how consolidation in the defense industrial base has affected the department's ability to promote competition and secure the kind of capabilities that we need in a manner that is timely and also cost-effective.
And Senator, from my understanding, consolidation has, over years, has edged out a lot of small businesses. I'm concerned about this. I think small businesses are important for the defense industrial base. They bring in innovation. They bring in new ideas and creativity. I think we need that in the defense industrial base now more so than ever. I think that really also understanding how consolidation is part of a process of just, economic, principles is really also a big part of the concern as well. I think as in government, we need to be attentive to the challenges that industry faces in the capital markets. So if confirmed, I will work closely across the department enterprise and also with the interagency, with the appropriate agencies that oversee and look at mergers and acquisitions in particular to better understand how consolidation is helping or hurting actually the defense industrial base.
Very good. Dr. Plumb, speaking of consolidation, you're being nominated for an acquisition and sustainment position. Are you concerned that the military won't be able to obtain its objectives in this area if it has to contract with monopolists on a regular basis?
Senator Hawley, you rightly note, and I agree with my colleague, Dr. Taylor-Kale, that competition is absolutely critical for helping us leverage our vibrant industrial base and make sure we get the capabilities we need. So consolidation in that context, especially where it drives out competition and innovation, is going to be problematic. And if confirmed, this is one of the areas I intend to focus on.
I ask in part because you have spent a number of years at Google and Facebook, the two largest monopolists arguably in the world, certainly in this country. And there's, I think it's safe to say, a lot of bipartisan concern about the concentrated power these companies have exercised across industries, and frankly, how they've used that power, which has been pretty disturbing in both of their cases. Talk to me about that. Let's start with this. Are you concerned that, let's take Google, that Google's market power is an impediment to the operations that you would need to, the mission that you would have at DOD? Is it an impediment to the sort of cooperation between private industry and the Department of Defense that we need to have in order for DOD and our military to be successful?
Senator, I think anytime you have a large concentration of market share in individual companies without real competition, you need to start worrying about innovation and whether the right sort of new technologies are rising to the top. So in that context, consolidation in any of the sectors is something that, if confirmed, I would want to look at and make sure we were taking steps to reduce barriers for small businesses, creating pathways for new innovative technologies to make sure we're getting the best things that our warfighters require.
Let me just, my time has expired, so I'll ask you this question, then I'll yield my time back, Mr. Chairman, or I'll yield the floor. I guess I've taken all my time. But here's the question. Let me just give you a chance, Dr. Plumb, to address more broadly. Why shouldn't we be concerned about your past work with Google and Facebook, given those companies' histories, given their monopoly power, given how they've leveraged and used their monopoly power across industries, and frankly, some of the pretty disturbing things they have done, from censorship to the targeting of young children, to the addiction model that they have promoted. I have been, and as have many on this committee, to be fair, vocal critics of this. So let me just give you a chance to respond to that. And with that, I yield.
Senator, appreciate the opportunity. My role at both Facebook and Google is really focused on taking data and analysis and using it to solve specific problems: ISIS recruiting, online child pornography, improving business operations to address copyright violations, financial fraud. So there are certainly bigger issues with both companies, and understand this committee and many more publicly have been critical of them. But if confirmed, what I could offer is that my skills in taking data and analysis, in understanding the software development and production cycle, and really how that type of software innovation can be integrated into products at speed and scale, are really key capabilities that we need for our warfighters. And while recognizing there are a range of concerns on the companies, those skills are something I hope to bring to bear to make sure we can effectively and efficiently get the capabilities our warfighters need to match the pacing threat of China.
Well, thank you very much, Senator Hawley, and thank you all, the witnesses, for your testimony today. And as I said, we will try to compress the questions for the record so that we can be in a position to move the nominations as quickly as possible. Thank you very, very much. With that, I will adjourn the hearing.